Welcome to Self-Led Love with me, your host, Bahia Miller. Together, using the powerful framework of internal family systems, we will take on the spiritual and oh-so-human curriculum of becoming radically responsible for our parts and how they show up and grow up in intimate partnership. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. When I sit down across a couple for the first time, I always ask, what is your repair process? Sometimes they're quickly able to say, this is how we come back together after a breakdown or a disagreement. Sometimes I get a blank stare. There's not really anything in place. So today I'm going to offer you what I see as the 3 most essential ingredients in a repair process, just as a way to really kind of start dipping your toes in that water and refine your thinking around what it means to be a person who repairs in relationship. Because this is not something you do one time when there's a betrayal, a repair process. This actually is an invitation that this is a lifestyle practice that you can use with the small things, with the big things, and as a vehicle for growth, transformation, updating your parts, coming into more maturity and awareness along the ride. So what exactly is repair? Repair, right? If relationships are connection and disconnection, connection and disconnection, repair is the coming back from disconnection into connection. And some people think, some parts of us think that that is just an apology, right? Parts that want this to be over, parts that want to make it go away, parts of us that feel guilty and don't want to sit in that discomfort, right? There are parts of us that get defensive in repair, parts that think they should repair first, parts that don't even see their own part in the dynamic. And most of the time, you do have a part, even if it is small and subtle and you can't see it yet, right? Because I'm really holding this conversation from the perspective that we are the creators of our experience, that we are responsible for ourselves and how we show up. We're responsible for what we say yes to and no to. And if we have parts that are making that difficult and confusing and getting in the way of our freedom and agency and autonomy and sovereignty and connection, then those parts need our attention, right? That's why we have the IFS process in conjunction with this relational work. Right? It all starts in our sense of self. Okay, so the repair process is coming back into connection after disconnection and is not just an apology, is not sweeping things under the rug. It is not getting defensive. Oftentimes in a repair conversation, maybe we'll talk about kintsugi, which is this Japanese art form and practice of repairing broken things, broken bowls, and they use this gold to repair the cracks, and it actually becomes more beautiful than had it not broken the dish. And so I'm really holding that repair conversation is about doing just that. It's about actually up-leveling and coming into more consciousness about whatever the dynamic is so that we don't have to go around and around and around and be in this painful hamster wheel for extended periods of time. I will say that sometimes you have to go around a few times with the same problem before you can get out of it. Sometimes you don't, but I've had to at least. And so let's just dive right in. The first ingredient that I am going to name that I think is essential for a repair process is accountability. How did I contribute to this breakdown, right? How did I contribute to the situation that we're talking about, right? Number 1, about the content, right? What are the parts of me that are at play here that I can own? And then what are the parts of me that show up in the process, in the dynamic itself, right? Do I raise my voice? Do I shut down? Do I run away? How did I contribute to things spiraling to the next level? Do I have parts that are scared to listen to you and hear your perspective? Did I have unconscious parts that were not thinking about what I was saying and they hurt you by accident? Whatever it is, our ability to see this clearly is a growing edge for many of us, honestly. Right? It can be so easy and distracting in relationship to just point our finger at our partner or at the other person and say, they did this, this is their fault. It is a contrary action to do a U-turn, to look back at ourselves and say, where did I help get the ball rolling, right? Even if it was a subtle way, right? They got reactive and then I got reactive on top of their reaction, right? That is a way that I kept passing that hot potato back and forth. I got pulled in. Whether it was a conscious choice or not, I contributed in that way. And so to be able to be accountable for our own behavior, our own thoughts, our own words, not in a way that is blaming ourselves and shaming ourselves, because that's another form of distraction from the actual problem. To be able to say and name, this is what I did without minimizing it, creates safety and trust. And without that safety of knowing that our partner knows what they did, knowing that we know what we did that contributed to this, growth is not possible, right? And so sometimes it does take an outside support person or a friend to say, well, you kind of do have a part in this too, right? Sometimes we can't see it ourselves. Denial parts are strong. But if we keep hitting up against the same problem enough, right? This is why we might have to be on that hamster wheel a few times. Eventually, right? If you keep having the same issue, the same pattern showing up, you have to get curious about, how am I contributing to this? Okay. So ownership, being able to speak to our partner, here's how I contributed to this. And maybe I'll take you guys through an example that is coming to mind from my partnership, which is with my husband, maybe even before we got married and after we got married, whenever we would go out like on a double date or be hanging out with friends, and he would start to tell a story about himself. He has a few really incredible stories. But when he would start to tell a story, I had a part that would get anxious and I would try to speed him up. And I would try to interject and help him tell the story in different ways. And I would see him getting frustrated. And this turned into big breakdowns after these dinners, right? He was not happy with me after those dinners. And at first, I think it was yeah, I did that, but you were taking so long. Yeah, right? This is not the skillful version of repair, right? But this is where it started, that process. And this happened more than once, right? This happened a few times. We went through this hamster wheel. And until I actually got clarity with my own parts about what was going on for me in these moments, I couldn't really take ownership for what I was doing, which was jumping into the conversation and rushing him. And so then we'll move to ingredient number 2, which is validation, which is really understanding the impact of our behavior, right? Not the intention, but the impact, and centering that impact, right? This is not where I'm explaining yeah, but you were taking so long when you were telling the story and I was feeling anxious that, yada, yada. This is not that. This is saying, tell me how my behavior made you feel. I really want to know, right? And in my example, my husband felt rushed, belittled, emasculated, invalidated. He felt that I was making him not trust his own self and storytelling. It's not a good feeling for him, right? And I had to really hear that a few times and sit with that before this part of me that was compulsively jumping in and scared could really simmer down, right? Before I was really working with that one intentionally. And so really centering the other person's experience in a dynamic, right? And I think some of us have parts, right, that are if I center their experience, what about mine? Right? Does that invalidate my reality, my parts? And the growing edge, the maturity edge here is that no, it doesn't, right? We can hold both of these things, that I have a part that's having this experience, but I have to see the impact of what that is and really think critically about is this something that is okay and healthy in relationship? And for me, in my example, this was not something that I wanted. I did not want my partner to feel belittled by me every time we went out with another couple, right? And so this will take us to ingredient number 3, right? Which is the creation of a new reality. In this example, right? I wanted to be a partner who could be patient and proud and spacious and supportive, right? I did not want to keep knocking him down when he would tell his stories. It didn't do us any good, right? And so I had to, first come to that on my own terms within myself, that this is who I wanted to be. And then I had to express that to him. I really want to be this for you and for me and for us. And here's what I'm going to do to try my best to embody that new character, right? Which for me, it looked like, maybe naming that before we walked into the double date. It looked like, taking some breaths, like having a smile moment with him before he starts his story, learning how to enjoy his storytelling, right? Like I had to get some space and unblending, right? It looked like unblending from that part in the moment. I had to do that in order for me to be able to enjoy those moments. And it actually, on the other side of doing that and having that experience a few times in a positive way, we were closer and I have more ease, right? When I go out with him, with other people, right? He is a great storyteller. He just does it differently than I would do it, right? Which I think is a thing that I see with so many couples, right? We do things differently than our partners. And so this was just kind of a middle of the road example that I'm using here today. But a repair process can be about really small things, little moments of rupture, and it can be about betrayal and bigger things, right? And that repair process might take months, right? And they can be as easy breezy for smaller things as like, hey, I saw that I did this. I imagined that it made you feel this. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to try to do this in the future, right? It can be that simple. And in that, right, we're creating a new reality. We're validating the other person's experience and we're just owning with our self-awareness, how we see ourselves showing up. So this is a lifestyle practice. It helped me to anchor this into my reality by hanging out with other people who were doing this lifestyle practice too, because it gave me a lot of opportunities to practice this way of relating. And the other person doesn't need to know that you're consciously working on your repair skills, right? I mean, just try it out. See what kind of reaction you get. Let me know in the comments or send me a message, right? I would love to hear how this goes for you. And if you want a more fleshed out version of repair and the other ingredients and components that are so valuable and really important in a repair process, I do have a Repair for Relationship Resilience recorded workshop that is available. It's in the show notes. For my wonderful podcast listeners, there's a code to get half off of that. And I think it's an awesome thing to sit down with your partner and get curious together about how you could integrate this and play with this and practice this in your relationship. It's the number one skill that helps create safety and give you a structure for growth and intimacy in partnership. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about this. I really see that we're learning this within ourselves, within our homes. And my vision and hope is that this ripples out into the world beyond our homes, right? We need this in our culture more than ever. And the growing awareness and practice of this, I really see it as a constant investment in the future of human beings. Maybe that's really big and a big vision for us, but I think it's important. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye.